Welcome to the Innovation Room, the space we explore the application of technology and AI in business, the practical and sometimes philosophical ideas shaping our future. The legal sector stands on the brink of a major transformation, the AI era, and firms are engaging with it with different views and paces. So I decided to invite someone from a firm doing things that are slightly uncommon, from their structure to how they engage technology for efficiency, as well as engaging in some very cool, innovative projects with AI. My special guest today is Paul Madden, Chief Marketing and Client Experience of Mapped Group. We skipped through the expectations and constraints of the legal sector, as it is well discussed, and we have covered them in the other episodes in detail too. Today we try to explore what the future law firms can look like and the role of humans in them. Expect a conversation that challenges the traditional norms and paints a picture of a more efficient, more empathetic, and more effective legal system. I am Somayeh, CEO of Geeks. Join me in the Innovation Room with Paul Madden. Hi Paul, thank you so much for joining me in the Innovation Room. Lovely to have you here. Shall we start with a quick introduction about you and a bit of background in the legal sector that you've had?
Sure. So, Paul Madden, I'm the Chief Marketing and Client Experience Officer for the Mapped Group. I have a background in hospitality. I've worked in a few other sectors. I've been in the legal sector for the last just over 4 years, so fairly new.
And is that a good thing or a bad thing, you would say?
I think it varies. I think it's helpful, like anything else, like even being a consultant, it's helpful to see things with new eyes. So it certainly helps. I mean, 4 years, I'm starting to become part of the establishment, if you like, but I think I can still see things with fresh eyes, and that helps. So yeah, it's been really interesting, and it's helpful to have come from other sectors where at times technology may be further forward than the legal sector. Perhaps a little less so today, post-COVID, but still, there's always been a bit of a difference, and other sectors have been moving a little quicker or further forward.
Yeah, it looks like, and correct me because I know a little bit of background, but were you brought to the sector for, or to the firm for helping with innovation?
Yeah, so in previous roles, I've specialized in the digital side, whether that's digital marketing or innovation. I've often been in a role that's been very much at the forefront, whether that was websites, online bookings, a range of different things. I've tended to focus on the digital innovation side of the marketing role, if you like. And I've done that through most of my recent career.
Yeah, wonderful. And you know the drill in the innovation room. We start with asking if you would bring anybody into the innovation room to do some serious innovation work with. Who would that person or those people be? Dead or alive, fiction or real? So we give full freedom.
Well, fictional. I think the actor's still alive, just about. So it would be a bit geeky, but it would be Jean-Luc Picard, who is the captain of Star Trek Generations.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit
Why
geeky,
him?
but I think why him? I think his leadership ability is exceptional as the character in terms of that kind of scenario planning, being able to step out of either the excitement at the moment or the difficulty of the moment and see the opportunities and the right course of action to take. And I think with all things, there's always a bit of hype, isn't there? And it's just understanding how to see the path forward and do so with some clarity and do so with some reassurance. So yeah, Jean-Luc Picard would be my choice if I was allowed one.
I think that's a really interesting point you raise, because innovation most of the time, if it's a bit disruptive, which in nature it should be, it creates a bit of chaos, a bit of uncertainty, and yeah, somebody who can bring clarity and pave the way
And
for
that
others.
little bit of leadership and see the way forward. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Cool, wonderful. So we've talked about legal sector in the innovation room a few times now. I am I have been giving trouble to the sector for a few years, writing about it and talking about it.
Mhm.
So I don't want to talk about the stuff that you would have heard before.
Right.
The reason I invited you was the specific things that you are doing in your firm, which I think is a really good example of how legal sector could change for good. Getting onto the some of the new stuff that is available with the AI and other technologies. So I want to focus more on that rather than
Right.
the stuff that we all have been talking about. How the expectations are changing and going through our dare or die bullseye that we normally go through in the podcast.
Right.
That how is the expectation changing from the sector? How is what are the constraints and what are the
Okay.
potential offerings, and then the role of human. So I think expectation is quite, we have talked about it a lot. Like we need more transparency, we need more less time and material kind of behavior, because it's not really serving the clients. It's not the best thing. It's not the good use of the lawyers' time, the stuff that they have to do and report on a time and material basis. And the constraints
Right.
are the ones that we always talk about. Like, it's legal, it's sensitive, it's privacy of people, it's um, the different sectors, even different sections of the country might have different variations, let alone different countries have different variations, and the complexity of that. And the fact that when you're dealing with legal matters, you do not want what is 90% kind of accurate. You want to be sure that what you're saying is
Yeah.
is the right thing, and you can reference it back. So if there is anything that it's new and you haven't, like, if there is any new aspect of the expectations and the constraint, let's go through them. But otherwise, I want to jump into the offering and what you do and discuss what that part's more.
Okay. And I mean, I think as we go through, some of those things will come out, won't they? I mean, so the Mapped Group is a collection of law firms, regional law firms that have come together under the Mapped Group. The Mapped Group, one of the things, and a lot of people will say this, and I think this is the bit that we hope to get right, is that the name Mapped is making a positive difference, and it's one of
Mhm.
the, well, it is our single value. How do we make a positive difference for our clients, our people, our communities? And technology presents us with an opportunity to do that. So I guess we're all grappling with, what can AI be? What's it becoming? It's moving quickly.
Mhm.
There's definitely a little bit of hype. We're all trying to work out what the reality is and how it will come alive. I think we're starting to see a few things within the business that we can properly use AI for, and we're in the process of testing that at the moment. Now, we're a relatively small business, so our resources are less, and I think timing is one of the reasons. So you're looking what's different, what's changing. I think there's a little bit of democratization in technology, so that some of the smaller firms like ourselves can access that technology and see how we can take advantage of it. Where I would argue, maybe the last couple of years, some of the larger firms have had the budgets to do the initial testing,
Mm.
and I think
Mm.
change has been quite dramatic, and to some extent that's to our advantage.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Because we know, for example, I know, for example, firms like LexisNexis have been working on AI projects for years. Um, but not your normal law firms wouldn't be able to before certain technology advancements that has happened. So what is different now compared to, say, 5 years ago,
so I think
or
some of it is that,
let's say 4 years ago before you joined? So what is different? So we have a good reference. What is different now compared to when you joined the firm?
oh gosh, right, that's a great question. Well, I don't think there was at that stage any access to AI in that way. You could have perhaps considered it to be machine learning and automation.
Hmm.
So if we go back 4 years, automation, perhaps there were things we could have done, whether that's marketing automation, communications to clients, things like triggering out of a case management system. Those would have been most probably the average law firm's opportunity to access technology in that way. Perhaps there was some machine learning going on in areas the business didn't even realize it was benefiting from. That's definitely very possible, using third-party tools. But actually running a machine learning or an AI project would most probably been very rare. So there was no real access, in my view, to technology at that point, maybe other than through a third party, maybe through things like searching a database, those kind of things. It would have been limited, maybe using perhaps a call center management system where they were using some AI to help with sentiment analysis. 4 years ago, maybe that was cutting edge and just starting to come through. Now it's slightly different. So we've got some good examples. So in contact center software, we're now seeing that not only can you use their AI engine, if you like, their bot to help you, either to help clients answer questions, perhaps to help your advisors answer questions. We're now seeing the opportunity to plug your own in, one you may have trained yourself, which we would have never been able to do in the past. So that's one example. We've now got the launch to, for example, Microsoft Copilot. That was restricted to large businesses, made quite difficult to access until January of this year. That's now available to any size business, and any individual even, to start to test and use. So that could be using Copilot within your 365 software, how to use Word better, or it might be that you're training your own Copilot on your own data set in order to do a particular bespoke task. Now, that would have been unthinkable even 6 months ago, quite frankly. So I think there is rapid change and a little bit of, as I say, the word democratisation, allowing smaller businesses to access the technology. And that's without some of the key providers in the sector bringing new products to market. You mentioned LexisNexis. I think PLC, Thomson Reuters are all working on things. Nothing's out there yet, but they're only months away, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, I think the coolest application of AI that is being talked between the lawyers that I have been exposed to is where they're using Harvey, the AI.
Is Harvey where they're using it to help with contracts and
Yeah,
such like?
yeah. So I think that's where they are really they are considered being at the edge when they're using
Right.
an AI lawyer. Like, I think it is freaking them out when they use it, but also gets them excited about, what's the possibilities. So when we talk about offering of the dare or die bullseye, we want to explore what is the future of the law firm could be in the this not so distant and then distant future. So with the expectations changing, what do you see the potential law firm looking like in the future?
That's a
What would be
challenging
the
question.
what would be they doing? How would they be working?
I think, it's obviously a challenging question. And in the legal sector, change, even though there's rapid technology change, that doesn't mean that it's going to change overnight in the legal sector. There's quite a lot of inertia. There's quite a lot of human elements that will be friction to the change process. Now, it's definitely going to change. At what pace, I can't say. But what I think we can look at is, I think, from the different stakeholders' perspective, I guess, is a nice way to look at it. So if you're a member of a legal team, how might it change what you do? And I think most of it's going to most probably be that augmented support. So I would expect the very early uses to help people do their day job more effectively, more efficiently. I think we'll see communication become something that we see as an immediate benefit. So again, it might mean at the fringes, some jobs are replaced and changed, but I think that's most probably not where it starts. I think it very much most probably starts with helping people be more effective and efficient. So one of the challenges might be, it's very difficult to focus on communication when there's a lot to do. And one of the challenges in all businesses, not just legal, is how to make sure that you're making clients feel individual, particularly when you've got a set task or there's a lot of repetition. This could take away some of that heavy lifting, particularly around the non-chargeable time, to allow better communication, to allow that opportunity to be more involved, whether that's from a junior level, perhaps note taking at a meeting and being more present, perhaps with perhaps a more senior solicitor who perhaps can respond faster to a client because of a summary of a particularly complicated document that helps steer in a particular direction. So you're not looking for 100% accuracy, you're looking for an initial thought and feel, and you can do that much quicker than you would have been able to in the past. So I definitely think if we look at it from the sort of lawyer's perspective and the team's perspective, I think there's an opportunity to provide a better client experience by having that augmented intelligence, if you like, that support alongside you in different aspects.
I used to think that would be the first thing that we see in the legal sector, that the lawyers become more those who use AI and those who augment themselves with AI, they're going to be more present, they're going to be more human, and they're going to interact with you the way that you feel more individual. Until two of my friends in the same week, separately, they told me that they have used ChatGPT to respond to a lawyer's letter, like within, I don't know, within an hour, and the response they have given has been, and it wasn't their own lawyer, it was the other party's lawyer. The
Right.
response
Okay.
has been like 5 pages, 10 pages, and it's really good quality arguments and things that would have taken them like a month to be able to write it themselves. And that made me think, oh geez, lawyers are going to be more busy because people are going to send them loads and loads, and lawyers, they have the responsibility to read the documents fully, respond to all the points, consider everything, so they are going to spend more time, whereas the people who send those letters, they don't necessarily mind if there is rubbish in those letters. It doesn't matter. It's And I saw the other side of the coin, that oh, lawyers might be in trouble just getting more and more materials that they have to go through.
That's possible. I mean, like anything, I guess it's how we use it. The issue here is whatever, I think there's a degree of expertise will always be needed. And you're right. I guess you could have, I'm just trying to think, what context would you see that happen in? Do you
Oh,
have an
it
example?
would have been something low risk, like one of them was a what's the word? They're building regulation, whatever, like complaining about the management company, nothing so
Yeah. Okay.
sensitive. And the data out there is well, public, and ChatGPT is very well trained in, yeah. And it's something that normally you don't want to, like the normal resident wouldn't want to pay a lawyer to draft a complaint
No.
letter. So what they would have written themselves wouldn't be of the good quality. Now they can generate like 10 pages of complaint, really good written by
That.
AI, that the lawyers of the management company have to respond to, because they have to consider it, they have to spend the time. And imagine if those guys don't use AI, and they would do it normally, like the way they have to
Yeah.
read like a 10 pages letter and respond to each point one by one.
And I guess, and that's where the legal companies will, be using AI to help them, consolidate a particular document to pick out the key themes. It will still require checking. It has to,
Yeah.
and of course, the client, which is in this case the building management company, that is going to perhaps change the way that their users respond to them. So again, I don't think necessarily, whilst the end response point is the lawyer, there are other parts to that chain, isn't there? There's the fact
Mhm.
that actually maybe that building management company needs to get its service right in order to ensure that it doesn't get lots of letters in the first place. You could argue maybe this is a good thing for
Good
better
thing.
service at the beginning,
Yeah, yeah,
potentially. Now,
absolutely.
the lawyers will always be needed at the right time. And again, I
Yeah.
imagine that the firm will use technology to ensure it provides value to its client so that
It's
it
part
can,
of when
yeah,
technology becomes democratized, the way AI has been democratized, and I call it citizen accessible. Like every citizen, almost, if you have access to internet and a computer,
mm,
then you can access AI, which we never had a technology being accessible overnight
no,
to millions, and you don't know how people are going to use. a technology. They're going to find
Very
weird and
true.
wonderful ways of using, and some of them is going to be good, like this one. Like, yeah, absolutely, push the management company to give a better service. But the point I was raising was more around, is no longer, I thought legal firms and legal sector will be incentivized to change because it's good for them, because it would save them time if they become more efficient. But now I think they will be forced to change because they're going to have more work for them
Yeah, I see what
because
you're saying.
other people will generate
Well,
more work.
I
So,
think like all things, there'll always be demand from clients to expect businesses to adapt and change to meet the demands of the services they need. So in this context, the building management company will expect their lawyers to be as efficient and effective as possible to manage this growing, way of their clients communicating, and that would
mhm,
be expected. And maybe we'll see businesses coming in and asking for, how are you using AI to be efficient to service my account? And that's just part of now doing business. So everybody adapts, and I expect that's what's always happened with technology, is we adapt and find a way through that provides, hopefully, better
mm,
experience, better value. I'm less worried about that. I think we'll use technology smartly to address that.
mm,
At the end of the day, you still need expertise to make sure what we're talking about is right, whether that's the individual sending it. And I think that's most probably the challenge, is if they're sending that in, they're going as they're using the best they can. And, of course, the AI is going to work, but you're still going, to stand the best chance of presenting your case, you're still going to need that final bit of expertise to ensure your
mm,
argument's correct. And I think that's the bit that we just need to make sure that that part of the service is valuable and is seen, and we can help with that. So
mm,
I get why you'd see that, but I think the reality is that everybody will adapt, and that will just become part of how we have
mm.
to do things. I don't see it as necessarily detrimental.
Yeah, and in terms of some more concrete examples, without breaking, I'm not asking you to break confidentiality, but without breaking confidentiality, is there
No.
anything you can share in terms of even your firm's approach to use AI, how you're partnering with the people you're partnering with, or what are the
Okay.
things that you're considering to be the good
What we're
good
doing.
things to
I
explore?
think I can kind of share the broad themes, and some of it dead straightforward. So I mentioned earlier that Microsoft had made its AI platform more
Hmm.
accessible, so
Hmm.
Copilot. So that we're certainly looking at, like a lot of others will be. How can we use that to help our people be more effective with the technology we already have? So there are a couple of elements there, aren't there? There's 365. Now, we all know that we only use a fraction of what it can do. We
Hmm.
know that a lot of, in all the places I've worked, I would argue that we never put enough towards training with technology for our people. We could always
Hmm.
do better with the technology experience and train people better. So if AI can help us get more out of Word and more out of Outlook, and then I think there's some quick wins there. So what we're testing is the license fee worth it? Everything suggests it could be. We've got to
Hmm.
test that before we roll it out fully.
Hmm.
So that's one
Hmm.
real simple way of looking at it. Copilot Studio presents you with an opportunity to train copilots or a copilot add-on with your own data, above and beyond what you're getting out of your Microsoft tenant and
What would
environment.
be, when we talk about training on your own data, the biggest concern people have is like, well, what is your own data and what's considered yours and what's considered your client's private information. So, as a law firm, what kind of information is considered your data that you can use to train?
Well, I think, like anything else, what you have to make sure is your data secure. So if you're using your data, and you've got to make sure you're not exposing it. Now, the nice thing about the way that Microsoft is working is that it's taking as long as you've got your data secure and properly set up and your governance is in place to start with, then your risk is much less. You've obviously got to make sure that you're checking so you don't
Mhm.
expose any data accidentally, but there should be no reason why you do if your
Mhm.
governance is in place to start. And
So
so in that,
you would, I'm looking for examples. You would be training on your own contract templates, I
oh,
assume,
you could
or.
certainly look at it that way. You could do a range of things. I mean, you're jumping to a legal output, but it might be
Mm-hmm.
simpler than that. For example, let's say we're training our new lawyers on how to work within a particular department, all the different rules, the policies, previous ways we've handled matters and cases. So it might be that then we create a chat device. They can ask a question to guide them in the first instance before talking to a senior member of the team. Now,
Mm-hmm.
that might be particularly helpful with hybrid working. You're not
Yeah.
sat alongside somebody right that moment, so you can ask your initial question of the database essentially to say, well, what should I do in this scenario? Now,
Yeah.
that doesn't mean you don't need to then sense check it with somebody senior in your team or another colleague. But
Yeah.
again, that's an example. So it's not necessarily can I write a contract quickly from this information. It might be something much more supportive than that. That tends
Okay.
to be that like Harvey, that tended to be the
Yeah.
default. Great, it
Yeah.
will write our contracts.
Yeah.
I think it's more nuanced than that, if I'm honest. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
that's just the exciting nirvana rather than the real value,
Yeah.
which will be much more incremental.
Yeah, and I have talked to different businesses, and I think that would apply to legal firms really well, because their clients go to them most of the time in their vulnerable state, and the kind of businesses that deal with clients when they are vulnerable, empathy is a big part of their service. So
Huge.
think about medical. I was talking to medical senior people in the medical industry a couple of weeks ago on
Mm.
a podcast, and it was all about like, how do we show people are vulnerable when they come to us? How do we look after them better? So in the legal sector is the same. Like, people go to legal, most of the time they don't go to get their views of, like, what do I do, like, I'm thinking of doing this, like, what would be the,
Yeah.
there are less of those kind of scenarios. More is like, I've done something I shouldn't have, or I'm in trouble, like, can you come represent me, can you come solve the problem, that kind of
Right.
stuff. So they are vulnerable when they go to the legal firms.
They certainly are, or they're certainly unsure, or so they're looking for a variety of things. They're looking for guidance and advice and reassurance, depending on their situation. And we represent across a variety of different sectors, whether that be private client work, and that might be it's a difficult divorce, somebody that's going through
Mm,
and they need to know the next steps and they're not sure what to do. It could be access to justice. For
mm,
example, we're helping on the COVID inquiry. We're looking after the core participants, those that are bereaved, that have had unfortunately people die through COVID. And
yeah.
again, often in that example, we've got well over 1,000 clients. So how do we use technology to communicate with them effectively so it feels connected? We obviously do many different things, but some of it
Mm,
at that level of clients, sometimes you can't be doing it all one to one. So how
mm.
can this help us make that much more
And
connected
it
for the end
takes
client?
creating empathy takes time. And if
It
you're on
does.
a fundamentally, you're on a time and material business model, no client wants to pay you to understand them, if that makes
Well,
sense.
and
So
and, and I think that's
how do
like
we
any
solve that problem?
I think that is the challenge, and I think we kind of touched on this earlier, where if we can start to use technology to remove certainly unnecessary or unnecessary chargeable time, unchargeable, non-chargeable time. Let me get the words right. So if we can use technology to help streamline some of the non-chargeable elements, then that time can be reinvested in the client experience, in the communication, in the time to have that little bit of empathy that
Mm,
everybody's human, wants to do that. We've just got to make sure our people have the opportunity. And
yeah,
like anything else, it's always a tension in any job you do, not just in the legal sector,
yeah,
but clearly it's important if we can do that.
yeah. And also, on the other side of it, lawyers are humans. So expecting a
Agreed.
lawyer who's serving, I don't know, what's the average a lawyer serves? How many clients on average a lawyer has?
It can vary by type of work. Obviously,
Let's say
you might be a convert.
let's put a random number. Let's say they deal with like
Let's
20
say they're
people
dealing
at
with
a
50,
time.
let's say they're doing 50, 75 cases at a time. I mean, it really does vary, but just for
50
example,
cases at a time. It's really hard to know the people, and each case has a couple of people, is normally not one person. So like, you're dealing with like
right,
hundreds of people at a time that you're expected to communicate with them in the way they want to be communicated, in the frequency they want to be communicated in, and within the level of details they want to be communicated with, which is a nightmare. It's not going to happen if we leave it to the lawyer to decide.
Well, and I
And they are
think this is where
human.
you get, and this is where you're getting compounding technology, aren't you? You've got a case management system that may never quite be used effectively. Now we're starting to have tools that we can add to that to make it more
Mhm.
effective. Clearly, AI may surface information, may remind you to do things. You still need the human element piece, clearly, because that's where you'll connect with the client. But we might be able to use it, as you pointed out, difficult to do things at scale without support.
Mm.
It's a team effort, but maybe we can do it with a few less people, but do it as well, or if not better, if technology enables those connections, that bit of automation that just reminds you to do an activity, or even starts the activity for you so you can be more present. I think that
Yeah,
word present, we've mentioned it a couple of times. I think that really
yeah.
helps. And again, it's like anything, you see the client more as an individual. And
Mm.
in any type of service, professional services, or any type of service actually, is making sure you see the person as an individual. And it might be the thousandth time you've done that this year, or hundredth, or whatever the number is. It's making sure that for them it's the only time they've done it. And
Yeah,
I think that's always the challenge. How can we use this technology to allow that more personal,
yeah.
emotive
And
side?
the other side of the complexity is the time. Time is limited. So a lawyer has limited time, the clients have limited time. To match them for the best interaction, I think there is no way other than technology and other than AI that knows exactly where everybody is, what is the most important, impactful conversation to be had by a lawyer with 100 people he's serving or she's serving.
Yeah, and I guess this is where technology aligns with other activities. So, for example, we're doing a bit of work around behavioral psychology. Now,
Mhm.
I won't go into the detail, but just to give you an idea, is obviously what we need to do is help
I
our
was
team.
hoping you would you would go into that a bit.
So, what we've been looking at and doing a study around, we've been working with the University of Manchester, and had a couple of associates working on this program, is looking at emotional regulation of communication. So, what you're trying to find out is what is the best way to communicate with clients. And what the data tells us and what the research tells us is there are a couple of strategies that our lawyers can deploy to be much more effective, emotionally intelligent communicators.
Mhm.
And you might read this and go, well, that's not rocket science. A lot of this is intuitive, but there's a few things. One, you've got to be able to do that day in, day out. Two, you've got to do it under pressure with a lot of work coming through. So you've got to do it at scale. How can we
Mhm.
use, I guess, that science to understand how we can do it best, and combine that with technology to guide, prompt, start off, to help our people be more effective. So
Yeah.
we've just coming out of what would be called a KTP, which is basically it's a
Yeah.
knowledge
Knowledge
transfer
transfer. Mhm.
transfer
Mhm.
partnership, and we're now looking to deploy the outcome of that. And alongside that, technology, and AI in particular, plays a very particular role in order
Mm.
to help the team be more effective communicators. So it's an interesting example. I think one of the things that came out of this research that, again, it almost wasn't expected. Well, it is expected, but just how strong it was. So, as well as clients appreciating when communication is good, and therefore it makes them feel great about their experience, what we found was, from the lawyer's perspective in the research there, not just our lawyers, but we did a study across lawyers worldwide as well. What it told us is how they value being able to be good communicators and provide good service. It's much more valuable to them than we give appreciation to. So
Mm.
again, if technology can enable them to be better communicators, they feel better about the service they provide. They have better well-being because of it, naturally, and that has that virtuous circle that means that actually clients go, oh, great, this is really good, this is what I wanted, feel
Mhm.
better about the value, and are more likely to recommend to others. And we
Mm.
start seeing that kind of earned growth side of the business. I think
Yeah.
AI is can help with that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to ask something that is a very difficult question. So, um, yeah, I don't understand. It's more of like let's explore a complex scenario together. Like, stay with
Right.
me,
Okay.
Paul.
Okay.
I want to know your views, or let's explore together. Is legal sector going to exist in, say, I don't know, 10 years time, 5 years time, 15 years time, 50 years time, like whatever? Is a sector going to exist with the AI powered world because of the nature of what the sector does and what AI is capable of? Are we going to see it disappearing or becoming some sort of like a luxury thing? We have it very small. It will become a very small sector that is, humans might be involved in
Gosh.
to do some sort of stuff. So it wouldn't be like what you see on the street, loads of solicitor firms, being available for people to do the work. And I give you some examples of why I am looking at it. I'm like, ooh, I don't know. Like, it might not, depending on certain factors, how they pan out. Um, but when you talk to lawyers or other people about legal matters, they're all freaking out that no, it can't. Like, it's very sensitive. It's like really, really important stuff. Like, there has to be a human involved. And I, as a technologist, look at other applications of technology, and I'm like, you're joking, right? We are we are diagnosing cancer so much better, and that's people's lives. We allow robots to perform surgery, and they do it better than humans. They're more accurate. They're more accessible. But whatever. So we are seeing examples of technology taking over some of the jobs that we didn't think it would because of the sensitivity or how difficult the task is. What do you think will happen to the legal sector? And we don't put a
Well,
timeline on it to make it less
no, I think a
less
time. I mean,
sensitive.
look, I think it's provocative to ask the question, will it still be here? I think, of course, it will. I think
Mm,
the analogy you've given around there will be parts of the service that become automated. Technology can do a better job, so why shouldn't it? That's no different than being more accurate with a cancer diagnosis or completing a piece of very fine microsurgery. You still need the humans around that experience to make it work, and this will be no different. Now, in terms of premium versus access to justice, I think it will affect the whole type of law across the board, and I don't think it will necessarily, and I hope it doesn't. And I think technology could help to provide better access to justice and democratize by making it easier for those to understand their rights, to understand how to make contact. I mean, you gave an example of writing a really detailed letter earlier because that would there may be ways where being able to reach out to technology, somebody that wouldn't have had access to justice might now have that, or at least a
mm,
starting point. So it's going to change. I think you're right, that's for sure. How fast and to what degree? Will we still need humans? Yes, of course we will. But can technology speed things up, make it quicker, make it more valuable to those that are doing it, provide more access, premiumize it potentially
mm.
in certain areas? I think it can, but I don't see it being detrimental. I think it will shake the sector out, and those that aren't providing a good service and combining these elements will struggle.
I think generally all sectors are gonna see that any average professional, average and below,
Yeah,
they're just gonna lose to AI. Because AI would still, it does a lot of like better than average at the moment. So, and it's going to just get better and better. So the nature is like and we have the problem. So that's a bit of a philosophy, like over the beer in the pub conversation.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
that is like, also it, like most of humans are average and below. Like, it's not like we have abundance of genius lawyers around. Like, it's most of it is like your normal average lawyer who
Well,
does a good job.
I mean, I'm going to disagree with you. I don't think that most lawyers are average. I think that's most probably harsh, and that's an easy shot to take. And I think you could say that about any sector, couldn't you? Oh, most accountants are average, and so forth. I think that's most probably harsh. I think there are average and below average lawyers, like there are below average and average people in every sector, including in the tech business,
So,
providing support
absolutely.
to
Yeah, absolutely.
what it will do, as it always has done, as technology or change comes through. The businesses that adopt it, work with it best, will be the ones that survive. There will always be casualties, and that's no change. Has it sped up a bit? Possibly, though
Mhm.
speed of change is a debate in itself, isn't it? But I guess my point is, I think if a business isn't offering a good service and hand on heart can't, then it's either technology or something else will mean that company struggles. I think technology might make it feel harsher, quicker, faster, if you see what I mean. But
Yeah.
ultimately, that business would struggle over time, regardless. I'm
I just absolutely see it inevitable that if there is a firm like yours working on innovative stuff, not just let's automate our process, let's just automate, let's
yeah,
just use Office 365 better, that everybody can do.
of
When
course,
they start thinking about what is it that we can do better, what is it that we can do differently, like the behavioral, sciences stuff that you're working on, then that makes
yeah.
your firm so much better, so much more effective. And I'm not talking about efficient. It makes your firm effective in what you do, that others won't stand a chance.
You've hit the right bit there. I mean, look, obviously, it's easy for me to say, well, my business, my firm, my group is brilliant, and that's exactly
Mm,
what we're doing. I think the thing to take from this, and I think what you're saying is right, is that one, companies can't be average. They can't get away with being average. They'll be exposed. Clients demand more anyway.
yeah.
And we know this. Demand for client experience and improved services is across the board, not just legal or other professional services sectors. That's number one. Technology is driving everywhere else, and it will also need to drive forward the legal sector. For a business like ours, what we have done slightly differently is we are looking at technology to do two things. And by doing those two things, it will help us with the third. So,
Mm,
genuinely, there is a real opportunity to keep improving the client experience. And I think communication is essential. And I
mm,
don't think the sector gets that right. And I think we've got a bit of way to go to get that really consistently good or great. And I think
mm,
there's a lot more we can do. So, from an employee point of view, I think all businesses have underinvested in the technology experience of its people. I think all do. It's very rare that you see they don't, and it's not intentional. But there's much more we can do, and that is as simple as being better at 365. But it's also building something that perhaps is unique, bespoke to the business, that just helps them do that job. Is that behavioral psychology? And we've learned how to communicate better, and I think those two things, if we improve the employee experience and the client experience, the business will grow, people will
yeah,
recommend and come back. And ultimately,
yeah,
the efficiency that technology drives is the byproduct, not the
yeah,
reason for doing it.
yeah,
And I think that's most probably what makes MAP stand out is we know if we get the other two things right, we'll get that efficiency piece.
yeah,
So we haven't started on that basis. And I think perhaps that might be something that's at least making us different, or at least in a smaller upper
yeah,
quartile, where a lot
yeah.
are going at it with immediate efficiencies. And I think that's most probably the wrong way to go.
I completely agree. I think we are in the innovation room, right? So we have to think about innovation.
Yeah, absolutely
So
right.
I'm thinking of Airbnb when they were, explaining the model of like normal people opening up their houses to strangers. Strangers go to strangers' houses to in a
That's
different
right.
country, in a different city. That was ridiculous idea. Like, and I don't know how many people would just shut it down to say like, no, it's not gonna happen. It's not the way it works. The same with Uber and those like Uber like kind of business models that completely wiped out your normal mini cab shop that you used to
Yeah,
get your taxis whenever you wanted to go. They don't exist anymore
no,
unless in very very specific areas like where I live, which is most of the majority of the people are elderly, so they don't use technology, they don't use Uber,
no.
and that, so then they exist. But other than that, it changes the it changes our society and the way we live. and it does it so subtly that we don't even remember how the world
Yeah,
was
what it was like
before
before.
Airbnb. Like, how would you do before Uber? How would you just, like, in the middle of the city, how would you just get a cab?
Hotels didn't cease to exist; they had to adapt.
Yeah,
And I think, so if there is a groundbreaking technology application in the legal sector, then the sector will adapt. Now, it might be painful. There was certainly some pain for those local cab firms, but the ones that, reorganized and changed the way they service, embraced technology themselves. Part of this challenge is that a sector hasn't embraced technology, so therefore, it can be
yeah,
affected by that change, can't it? And I think the only difference here is we're starting to see technology becoming more available to firms. Now, whether they embrace it, whether
yeah,
they can, I think it's a real challenge. I think there will be something. I don't know what the answer to that
yeah.
is. But again, if we look back now, I think Uber has some challenges, doesn't it, in the way that it works, and Airbnb too.
Yeah, I don't say they wouldn't. It's just the impact of, like, what I'm talking about is the impact of technology on the sector.
So I'm hoping for a business like ours, that impact will be something we can embrace, and that we will be in a position where either we're alongside that impact anyway, or we're in a position to react to it quickly, and that we're not in a position where we resist it, but we find a way through it to improve the business and move it forward.
I think you're fine. That's why that's why I invited you as an example to the
There you
innovation.
go.
I think what you do is very interesting. Specifically, the way you're structured, which is one of the biggest problems of the legal sector. The partnership structure has a
Yeah.
has a inherent problem with embracing technology, because the way it takes so long to get to being a partner, that your partnership can't have the diversity it needs to embrace the technology.
No, and
And
that
I'm referring
and
to age brutally. I'm referring to, you don't have young enough people to the technology being native for them, so they would challenge the board's decisions and the partnership group decisions about, like, why are we not doing this, because it's
that's
so
interesting. I
obvious.
think, age might be a factor. I think more of it is the structure, and potentially one of those challenges around the structure, isn't it, in terms of the partnership model.
Yeah, 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 absolutely.
Um, just on the age thing, our compliance director is into his sunset years. Let me put it that way. And we used to have a partnership model back in the day, and we don't today.
Yeah,
Obviously, it's a different
yeah.
model. And our board aren't lawyers um, anymore, or whatever, however you might put that. But what's interesting about him, he is embracing technology. Now, is it because the model's different and he is in a different position and looks at, in the context is different? I suspect a little bit of a blend, but genuinely, I don't think I've seen anybody more excited than somebody that's nearing their 80s, that's been in this legal sector for 50, 60 years, and they are excited by what this can do to help.
I've seen that, but that's not the norm. And I would say that,
No,
why is
okay.
it not the norm? Because the more, and I feel it myself. I feel like I have started to get a bit old for. I feel older, and I'm only 42, and it's just because technology. It's a generational thing. It's a new generation. They are born into certain
Okay.
technologies, and the way they think and react around it is very different to me, who when I was a kid, mobile wasn't there. So I was like, I don't know, the first time I saw mobile, I was like 18 years old. And
Yeah,
imagine a kid that is born to a world with mobiles,
true.
a kid who is born into the internet age, a kid who is born into, like, my niece who's 5 years old, she's taught herself English from YouTube. Nobody has taught her English, and she speaks perfect English. So that's the generational that I think. So when I refer to age, I'm not saying people lose ability to learn technology. It's about circumstances.
But they can change, and I agree. I think
Yeah,
you're absolutely right. If you're born with technology, then you just embrace it as is, right? Whereas if you're not born with it, you have to adapt and change. And again, we've touched on it throughout this whole conversation.
yeah, yeah,
Behavioral change is the real issue here.
yeah,
Technology is just the thing that we were embracing, utilizing, but the change is the bit that if we do it well, we'll succeed. If we struggle, and that is either because we don't have the hearts and minds, or so there is a generational thing, and I do accept that you have to work harder at change. So unfortunately, I'm over 50. You're lucky
Yeah.
enough to be in your early 40s. Lucky you.
Yeah.
But I'm over 50, and I guess I have to work harder at it,
Yeah.
right? And
I
I
think
know
we
I'm
just
not
need
on.
to be more exposed to young people. So I keep saying, whenever
Yeah,
I speak, I'm like, no, stop saying that we have to teach the young people. No, we have to learn from them. Like, it's a different world now. They
we
are more
do, and I
savvy than
think.
us.
And of course, what we can do is bring, the older generation can bring that experience to bear to say, well, how do we get the best of this? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but again, change is the key, and I
Yeah.
think that's the hardest thing. And you won't, like anything else, we've got to get in what we're doing. We've got to get a groundswell of change. Now, we won't change everybody because you can't.
Yeah.
What we'll do is change enough for it to tip, so
Yeah.
that the business moves forward. And over
Hmm.
time, and you make your point, as the younger lawyers and the younger paralegals and support teams come through, then it gets easier. They embrace it a bit quicker. So, and what we've got to do, like all things, is do as repetition, all those things.
Yeah.
So a lot of it, technology is the thing we're using. Nothing's changed. Like when we were back trying to just improve general service, technology wasn't there then, but we've still had a lot of work to do. This is no different in a way.
Yeah. I think that might be a conversation, another conversation in the pub over a beer. Like, is
Okay.
AI another technology or is it different? I think it's different because it's intelligent, but that's a
Well,
different
we could debate
conversation.
whether it's really
Yeah.
intelligent. That might be something else. That is for another day. I would right now, I would say it's augmented intelligence rather than automated intelligence, if you like. So it's the human intelligence with support, but it's on the road to general intelligence, isn't it? Artificial general
Yeah.
intelligence, and we'll
Cool.
see. Okay, all right.
So very, very, always very interesting conversations, and it gets more and more interesting the more we go on. But unfortunately, we have limited time. So I want to finish by asking you another difficult question,
Okay.
which I'm not going to get involved. It's your answer. So, if you had unlimited resources and you were given a law firm, what would you create? What would you do to that law firm? Unlimited
Oh,
resources, I mean, like money, time, talent, whatever resource you can think of. What a good
well,
future ready firm look like?
so I'm going to be slightly boring in the sense that unlimited. I know we could have unlimited resources if we want, but if we're going to create a sustainable, profitable business, then we can only have the resources that are appropriate to what we're doing. So, with that in mind, I think what would be good is if we could have the investment earlier on in order to invest in the change, training, support, maybe running multiple activities at once, really speeding up what we're doing, having the resource available early on to step back and see the bigger picture and be able to really push it at pace, because all businesses have to choose and cherry pick their projects, right? So if
Mm,
you could
mm,
invest up front in order to then pay it off over a longer period of time, so you could really go for it and it was still super profitable and you were doing it sustainably, then definitely that would be the approach. Because one of the challenges a business is always trying to work out is, what's the trade-off? How do we do this best as we can, but within our resources?
I'm gonna push back, Paul. Like, I want to play with your imagination a bit. So the reason we say unlimited resources, because of course it's not realistic. Nobody has unlimited resources, but we wanna play with the imagination a bit and say, like, if we had unlimited, what would good look like? And then of course we're not gonna get there, but that becomes our North Star, and we can
All right.
work
All
towards
right.
that.
Well, I tried to fudge my answer, but there we go. All right. So on that basis, I mean, look, I think we would double down heavily on training. I think that's absolutely fundamental. Whatever systems we come up with and whatever the AI can do, whether humans are involved, we need to really, really work on getting the best and really getting that change right. And that will
Mm.
require quite a bit of investment. So if money was no object, we'd really spend time getting that right. I think the opportunity to take risks, of course, is good. So you wouldn't just go for the best bet projects. You would have some stuff at the fringes that really stretch what you can do. you'd also be able to go much quicker. So what would it look like? I think in the end, you'd end up with technology that was allowing you to focus on the most important tasks, those human tasks that a lawyer must provide, where the real value and expertise come in.
How would I feel hiring a lawyer from that firm? What would be my interaction with the lawyer look like?
Well, in theory, would you see a lot of change? Because you would choose to engage that lawyer in the most effective way possible for you. Now, it could be you want to do that all through chat. Well, happy days, crack on. We could facilitate that if that was what you needed. But at the same time, you might want to pick the phone up and talk to us, and we could support you on that. So I think what it would mean is responsiveness tailored to you. You'd feel communicated with, you'd feel connected, you'd feel valued, right? Regardless of what support you're looking for. I think that ability to feel reassured, how do I choose a service? What do I need? And if technology makes that dead easier, great. Then it's about connecting and feeling valued and understood and knowing what's going to happen next. I haven't mentioned it much in this, but I will argue the biggest issue in the legal services as a client is understanding the next step and knowing what's going to happen and when, and the communication being good. Now, if technology enables that, so communication is exemplar, wouldn't that be amazing if communication was excellent? There you go. That's what it is. Yeah. Communication is excellent for every client, regardless of budget. We use technology to democratize that.
Excellent means different things to different people. So if we can make everybody feel their communication is excellent, then that's a very wonderful.
And so they come away and they think, right, I'm understood. I know what's going on. I feel I'm getting value. And I know that I can contact my lawyer if I need to. How that is achieved is maybe where technology comes into play. So then that value that lawyers providing, it's not just, oh God, I've got to have this because I've got this difficult situation. It then becomes, I've got a lawyer that I know I can trust. Again, trust is a big word. And if technology allows us to build that,
I think we might just have designed an organizational North Star of a future law firm, which is the trust level. What's you track the trust level of your clients to the firm and to the lawyers, and that's
I guess takes us full. And it takes us full circle, doesn't it? Because ultimately, you can run a law firm with no technology and be highly trusted. But if we can run one with technology more effectively and efficiently and improve the trust, now we're onto something.
Yeah. I think that without technology, it wouldn't be sustainable because it will become very expensive.
That's a fair challenge.
But, well, wonderful. Really, really love chatting to you, Paul. And thank you for bearing with my very difficult challenging questions.
They've been enjoyable, actually. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Lovely to have you here.
Good. Take care. Thank you.